All right, well, I'm ready. Again, give me the thumbs up, the nod. All right, well, thank you everyone for being here. We are going to discuss our ethics policy and going into Tuesday, what will be our ethics the workshop. That's what we call it here. It's called a hearing up in the Kansas legislature. So my goal before coming to office was to ensure that the city council ethics policy had an overhaul and was modernized. As we see our city grow and really get to where we want it to be as an economic leader in our region, we also need to make sure that ethics policy grows with it. So with that, we started work on this really immediately. I think if I check my email, the first draft that I personally started and wrote was sent to legal and the manager, I think on the 28th of January of last year. And it's been somewhat of a slow process, but I am really proud of the product that we came out with. So before I kind of jump into it, I want to just thank our staff and our WSU MPA fellow, Sarah Mullins, did I say your last name right? Probably not the way that Megan just looked at me. But Sarah, she's worked very hard on this, and really the product, I think, is pretty great. So my goal here is, with this new policy, is to outline a list of tenets. Pretty much, we find that good ethics policies actually have three parts. One is the tenets. This is the list of behaviors that we, as elected officials, are expected to follow and that we aspire to. So on our comparison chart here, we have a comparison of the proposal going into the workshop on Tuesday. This is the policy going into that. We expect public feedback, and we also expect things might change during that discussion. So right now, just with the first draft, or actually this is draft number 12 to be honest, but the first draft that we are going to work, we'll start out with a code of really aspirational values. Now, if you look on our chart right now, our current policy really just has that. Where you look at Wichita Old versus Wichita New, and then you look at the other cities that we're comparable to, or the ones that we should be competing with, they all have some form, or most of them have a form of the aspirational values that if you are to serve the public in an elected position, you should have. Now, everything else that we put into this policy is actually in addition to the old policy. So the next thing that most ethics policies that have teeth to them is going to be some type of independent board to investigate situations of unethical behavior or allegations of unethical behavior. Now, this is a big deal because it allows a due process as well, which means that if someone is accused of unethical behavior by really anyone, it gives them an opportunity to also repair the damage by showing that that they are innocent, or it gives the council an opportunity to actually have the investigation play out for a member or a board member who might be accused of something. Now, we took a very different approach when it came to to picking out who's going to serve on that board. And it's something it's going to make us stand out, and it will likely be copied by other cities. We actually will be appointing a chairperson for a 2-year role that will be appointed by the mayor, but vetted and confirmed by the city council. Now, this person we're hoping will be someone from academia or someone from the legal field who will have an understanding of these type of policies. And with that, we will be selecting 6 people in the event of a investigation, or really some type of accusation, will be from 6 different. I'm going to pull them up for you. 6 different advisory boards. So it's almost a jury selection. So in doing that, we avoid a couple things. One, we avoid anyone who, let's say, might have be named on this board so that they can't be approached ahead of time by anyone in the public or any of the members. By having a more random jury selection for each time that this board meets for a particular issue, it guarantees that we will have folks who can't be approached ahead of time. And these boards will be from the Diversity, Inclusion, and Civil Rights Committee, the Library Board, the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission, the Board of Park Commissioners, and the Wichita Airport Advisory Board. So each one of those boards, one member from those boards will serve. And of course, there's some language in our policy that makes it so you can't have too many people or more than one person from a single district and so on, to make sure that's a fair representation. And again, utilizing this jury process is something I believe Sarah found in her research with a city somewhere maybe in Texas. But it is a different way to do it that doesn't put any of our employees I think in an uncomfortable position, and it also creates it so that this board changes. Who would actually be the jury will change, so that there's no, I guess, way to influence the members of that board, because really you won't know who they are until they're called upon. So with that, they will be able to investigate any type of issues of ethical issues that might come up. And then, of course, the other part that we need is really the teeth. What happens if someone is found to be unethical, and how does this work? So, as we know, in the last, in the current policy that the city of Wichita has, there is nothing. There's no penalty. There's really nothing that will hold you accountable to I guess, evidence that you've behaved unethical. Now, our penalty could be up to a public censure or a fine between $100 and $1,000. Again, also, and kind of getting into the next, I guess, aspect here, is having a full-on, I guess, process to evaluate if someone has committed any type of unethical behavior. We'll also open it up for this last part, which looks blank, but it really shouldn't be, which is if there are allegations and the investigation finds that someone rises to the level of an ouster, then any member of that board can actually alert the DA. Any member of the public can alert the DA and pass that information forward. What we found when it comes to ouster proceedings is they almost always have to follow some type of investigation. Whether that investigation is done by the media or the investigation is done by another type of lawsuit. So with that, we got Johnson jumping in here with his notice. So with that, we will actually have likely one of the toughest ethics policies really in the Midwest. Now, I do want to make one thing, one note. Some people, I think, associate ethics policy with campaign finance, and although there is an ethical overlap to that, this is different than campaign finance, okay? If we want to jump into campaign finance, that's technically probably under the same umbrella and have ethical overlays. That is technically a different area of policy that I'm willing to look into, but it's something that this isn't supposed to take on that. This is much more behavioral. Also, this policy puts limits on any type of gifts that come in, and it has much more strict, or not even just strict, but more consistent reporting on what to do if you were to receive a gift over, I think it's $50, how to report that so that we can be open and transparent with that type of those type of I guess, interactions. And also the goal was to balance a measure of influence, right? If someone was to try to interact with the city and utilize that interaction to influence decisions, that is something we want to not have happen. Versus if someone comes in and, let's say, started their own company and wants to give out a hat with their logo on it and take a selfie with an elected official and throw that online, right? Like, that hat is probably not going to influence, I guess, the awarding of of any type of taxpayer money. So trying to have that balance where you can actually utilize proper communication with folks while also ensuring that we don't have any type of unethical influence was really the goal of this. And I think that we're going to probably see that line be debated and discussed in our workshop on Tuesday. So with that, I'll open up to some questions because I know it's kind of a lot. And this has been a hot issue, I think, in Wichita and really nationally over the last at least 15 months. So it's something that we really want to tackle, but do it with purpose. Do it in a way in which we can restore trust in the public, restore trust in folks who want to do business with City Hall, and make sure that moving forward, we, the taxpayers and the citizens here, can be confident that our standards would be as high as any standards in the country.
Can you talk about what prompted you to want to tackle these as soon as you started last year? We know what happened recently, and when we look back at that, it's like obvious that things need to be changed, but you knew something before, or you feel like there was a need to tackle this before. Can you speak about that?
Yeah, so there's a couple of ways to approach that, where I think that, we have seen some reporting that questions the interactions of some elected folks with folks outside of the City Hall who might do business with City Hall. And and I'm not in a room when that stuff happens, or did happen before I was elected. So I can't speak to that, but I can speak to the fact that without a policy put in place that actually will show the public that this isn't undue influence for the sake of having favoritism when we give out contracts instead of allowing our professional staff to recommend those contracts to the best person. We need to set up that standard that this is going to be the rules moving forward. So I just want to point out that this isn't an indication, set up rules isn't an indication that right now there's any problems. It is a recognition that to avoid future problems, and even if there are no future problems, or let's say even if there was no past problems, it's still good to have rules in place. It's still good to have this, level playing field so everyone knows what to expect. And it protects not only the elected official, but also anyone who wants to do business with City Hall. We don't want folks who want to do business with City Hall thinking that they have to, take an elected on vacation, right? Like, we don't want them thinking that. We want instead more people coming forward to work with City Hall so that we can pick out the best folks, the best business, the best contract to do the work that we need done. Yeah, is this all your email popping up? Okay. What else?
Does this address the ethical principles of people wanting to run for city council office?
Ethical principles for people who want to run for city council. So when we talk about campaigning, we actually fall under the Kansas Ethics Commission as candidates when it comes to campaigning. And we also have a little bit of our own campaign, boundaries. This isn't meant to really address campaigning. That already, like I said, falls under Kansas Ethics. We are required to report. We can make, that language, that policy tighter if we wanted to, but overall, we're pretty much in the same lane campaign-wise as other state-level elected officials. So when I look at what to tackle first as policy as mayor to restore trust in the public, it really is what we're missing, which is a ethical policy that actually can be reasonably compared to our sister cities, to the places that we're comparable to. So, like I said, this chart, we were inspired by a lot of these different policies and, wanted to make sure that ours not only would stand up to, let's say, a unified government of Kansas City and Wyandotte, or Kansas City, Missouri, which our research showed had a very strong policy, but also, in many aspects would actually surpass that. And again, the goal is to be purposeful. So I remember my first year in the legislature, I walked in and made a statement that I will not accept any gifts from anyone. Any lobbyist, I will not accept your gift. And I wound up spending over an hour one day returning a toothbrush from whoever works for Delta Dental, right? Because it really was that toothbrush that they drop off kind of just to, I guess, build a relationship. Was that actually put us in any type of ethical corner? No, it doesn't. So that experience in my first term as a legislator kind of led us into this as well, where we want to make sure that we're not just going through the process of what it is to be ethical, that actually we have a more sophisticated policy that shows, that actually attacks, I think, the areas in which folks have pointed out as our weak areas.
Did you say there is no limits for gifts until the changes suggested?
As of now, there's no limits for gifts that I know of. My understanding is that if you were to provide a gift over, I want to say $500, and it's accepted, then that gift might show up on your statement of substantial interest. So every elected official has to fill out a statement of substantial interest. And again, that's outside of ethics policy. Now you're under campaign policy. So like my wife works for our church. She puts that's on our substantial interest form. And it's pretty much if you own any businesses or anything else, or if you have any type of income. So that is where that might wind up. But again, what makes us different, because we don't have our ethics policy to address gifts yet, this will, is that when you do the form of substantial interest, if someone was to give you a gift over $500 and that person's a lobbyist and you're in a legislature, lobbyists have to also report on their side. In our current system, we don't have, if someone was to give a gift under the current ethics policy and it was accepted, the giver doesn't have to report that, and currently, unless it's considered under substantial interest, the receiver doesn't have to report that. And that's one of the things that I wanted to make sure to tackle. So here, when it comes to gifts, we actually put a limit. I think the limit is a year long. It's based after Topeka. Topeka's gift limit is about $50. This from like one entity, really, is about $50. And Topeka meets for about 4 to 5 months a year. So it's okay. Well, how do you take that 4 months and then drag it out to a whole year because we meet? Let's make this a yearly thing. And I think right now the proposal, my watch is telling me to relax. This thing gets sassy with me. Right now in the proposal, it's about $150 is the limit per year per entity, and that's including any type of like outings. So it's different, and we put a cap on it, but also we make exceptions. Like I said, we want to be purposeful. We make exceptions where if we go to the ARC and they want to have a conversation with us about their clients and how we could be better partners with them, and they're serving lunch to everyone who shows up, which is common, that doesn't count. Like, that type of situation really isn't, I guess, stepping into an ethical gray area at all. But I guess flying us out on a private jet to some Bahamian vacation, that would definitely count as, like, I think, an ethical issue if that person was also seeking favoritism. So, short story long, sorry, I joke. Like, I'm really excited about this policy, and one of my, I think, issues or problems being mayor is that my other jobs I teach. So I want to jump into this and treat this like it's a class, and I know it's not. So I rather, instead of talking about the parts I enjoy here, I rather just take the questions to make sure that you guys get what you need for your story.
I just asked so many questions because I couldn't believe you guys didn't have one already for the limits on gifts. Right.
And that was kind of an eye-opener for me, too. And frankly, I think that it's a more of a, I think, example of how our city is growing, right? There are other cities that don't have policies that are beyond the aspirational side, where we want you to aspire to be this. And then there are some that actually have a history of really shady behavior, and those wind up with a full-on standing committee, with a full-time staffer on, to investigate. Now, we're an interesting, and I'm just going to throw those out there. I know, Megan, I'm talking too much. I'm just going to throw this out there. We're an interesting city in which we don't negotiate the contracts. The electeds don't. The professional staff do. So our ethics policy, because we're what's considered a strong manager system or a weak mayor system, our ethical policy needs to fit into our current governmental system, which is different than, let's say, a strong mayor system where, in some of those systems, the mayor and their staff actually negotiate the contracts. So, there's different levels, I think, of or lines of influence in different cities, and we see variants, especially taking on this project for a whole year, that in different cities have little tweaks that kind of address the issues that they have discovered to be an issue, a problem. But here, we also have to take into account that our city form of government is different than some of these other forms of government. So you can't just mix and match, just grab this ethics policy and lay it on ours, or you wouldn't have the same result. I'm talking about ethics for 15 months now. You guys really have no questions? All right. Thanks a lot, everyone. Again, this will be Tuesday. The workshop is just that first real discussion of this, or the second discussion. We already talked about kind of laying out the framework last year, a different workshop. And if you follow me on my personal page, I've been talking about this on my Facebook Lives on Saturday for probably the last 2 to 3 weeks. I really want to put out there what this is and take questions on it, and also kind of set up the difference between this and some other types of policy that also fall into the realm of ethics, so that everyone knows what we're working on right now. So if you're someone who wants more information on this, make sure to check out one of my lives. They're still up, and reach out anytime. This is I think a big deal for us moving forward, and something I'm very proud of. I also have a section here about events I should probably talk about before I wrap up. So with that, and also during the workshop, that will be public, so make sure that if you are someone just watching and you want to give us feedback, to provide us feedback. We are still making tweaks to the legislation so that it does represent what people are looking for. So just one reminder that, as always, we have so many great events and classes going on here in Wichita. Our staff have found safe ways to continue to provide excellent content and programming for our residents, even in the age of COVID. You can find a list of events on our website. It's on the front page, and see all of our great classes in our Evolve guide. Residents can also find events in our City of Wichita Facebook page under events. In the last year, we have hosted over 650 events throughout the city, and continue to look for ways to engage the community during this pandemic. From craft classes at the Great Plains Nature Center to pottery at City Arts, our virtual story times for kids through the library. There's something for everyone, so please be sure to check it out. We are still going through the pandemic. We still are working to get vaccines out, or other areas of government are, but we still got to keep our guard up and not just kind of jump back into, I think, things as usual. So in doing that, the city is being aware that some of the stuff that our kids are used to doing, or folks are used to doing during the summer, might not be safe to do right now. So how do we fill in that void? The best way to fill in that void, and the best way we could be a partner, is to go to our website, to go to our Facebook page, and make sure you check out some of our events to kind of fill in. I think if kids aren't playing a particular sport, there might be an opportunity for them to explore another interest. All of our events have been created with COVID in mind, so that we can do it as safe as possible. So we want to be a partner with families to kind of fill in that gap on what our kids might be used to doing during this time, as we await more vaccinations from the federal government. And right now, we represent 1% of the entire population of Kansas, not Kansas, of the US, and I think we've gotten about 1% of the vaccines. I talked with Adrian over at the health department yesterday. I got a bit of an update. They will be starting phase 2 probably, I think, this week. If not, I think actually some of you guys had a story on it last night. And they are trying to roll out phase 2 as responsibly as possible, given the limited amount of COVID shots that they have. So for those folks who fall into phase 2, please keep looking at our friends over at the county, keep checking out their websites. Also, if you're a veteran, the VA has their own source of COVID shots. If you're an eligible veteran and you fall into phase 2 or even phase 1, please reach out to our local VA. They have a different supply than our county health office does. So there might be, I guess, a way for eligible veterans to get inoculated against COVID before having, I think, to go through the phase 2. And the goal is to get as many people vaccinated as possible, of course. And I can take some questions on that if you guys have them, but if not, of course, the county's really in the driver's seat for this, and so is the state. They won't let me run it. Cool. Well, thanks, guys. Appreciate everyone being here. Again, next week's going to be interesting, and then we will hopefully take back that feedback from the council, also from the public, and make some tweaks to our current bill that we were proposing, and then hopefully in the next month or two have a up or down vote on this at the council and bring us into a new era with new ethics policy. Thank you.